It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
So with all the craziness going on, and look, we've got a house that's on fire. It's hard to focus on anything else, but the reality is we still have to focus on how do we move our economy forward and make it to where it works for average, everyday working people. And look, as I've said, we've got a Republican Party hell-bent on chaos. A shutdown is not too long down the road. No functional House to head that off. We got lots of problems. And a big part of that is, we've got an economy that seems rigged against average, everyday working people. That's why I've asked our good friend Kat Hadley to come talk with us. She's the director of the Great Economy Project. AmericanAgenda.com is their website. They're out there doing the education work of getting people to understand there is a possible better way. There are other alternatives. This isn't the only alternative. We can do better. Kat, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here again.
So where are we? What are we doing? What's the good news so far? I know you're out in Wisconsin. You're out in North Carolina. You're coming to Pennsylvania. What's going on?
So we have a lot going on. We just wrapped our education portion in Wisconsin, and out of our cohort, over 98% of people decided to stay and work on advocacy. And so how our program works is that we go in and we give people our view of the economy that is pretty much that it's rigged against the working class, that the wealthy aren't paying their fair share in taxes, and that there should be a livable minimum wage for everybody. So we talk about those issues, we bring in experts, and then we basically say, do you want to stay and help us work on these issues? So it's really great to see that in North Carolina and now in Wisconsin, we get these massive response rates to stay on and do something. So in Wisconsin, you're going to see some people start really moving and shaking on this issue, especially the minimum wage piece on the state level in Wisconsin. We're going to be back for training soon. And in North Carolina, that's looking like people, testifying in front of the House and the North Carolina House about different things. And they're at different fairs, just talking to their fellow citizens about these issues and trying to make a difference. And then on November 1st, we're going to be launching in Pennsylvania. We'll be in Mount Pleasant. So anyone's welcome to come out. It's totally free. You get free dinner. You get to learn about stuff. We have door prizes. It's real fun. So come out if you can.
No, that would be great. What you're doing is what I've been saying, for years has to be done. Activating, educating, engaging voters, getting people, to take ownership. Democracy, they say, is participatory. This is how you participate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for a lot of these people, because we go to smaller towns, we specifically target around 5,000 person towns, because the idea is if one person knows, 20 other people know. If you're a small town person, you might know that very well. But yeah, so, but what I love about this job is really showing people like you have a voice and that voice matters. And sure, this is going to be hard work and we might not get there overnight, but politics is one of those things, like once you turn on to politics, it's really, that's it. Like that's how I fell into political work was, yep. Seeing a problem and realizing, somebody should say something about this. And
understanding that you can make change. I mean, we've been sold on this idea that you can't fight City Hall, that, the big moneyed interest, they control everything. And I say, look, sure, they've got all the money, but we've outprocreated them. There are more of us. We can vote. We can, while we still can, because I fear we're heading towards a period where maybe we might not be all able to vote. But while we still can, we still have the ability to outvote the moneyed interest.
Yeah. Well, and I always tell people, a lot of my friends, I'm 35. And so there's a lot of younger folks that I hang out with. And I always tell them when they're like, well, this is hopeless and I'm walking away. I try to challenge that as like, who do you think benefits when we think this way? Who's benefiting from us just saying, okay, well, it's too hard, so we're walking away? And then also as somebody that's done a lot of activist work, I did food stamp expansion in Michigan when it was Republican controlled and won on everything we were fighting for there. I've done childcare expansion on campuses, all types of stuff. And the thing is, you can win and you can fight City Hall, and I have. It's hard work, but you can do it. So yeah, I just always think about who's benefiting from when we feel like nothing can happen, because it's rarely the people doing the good work.
And you focus on one of my most important issue, and it's not the sexy issue that everyone gets all riled up about, but our tax code is so badly rigged. The game is so badly rigged that the wealthy and the powerful get all the benefits. And I think George Carlin said it the best. The rich get all the money, do none of the work. The middle class does all of the work, pays all the taxes, and the poor are there to scare the hell out of the middle class. So they keep showing up to the jobs. That pretty much sums up our economy.
Yeah, and if we even have a middle class at this point, we have one, but it's a sliver of, when I was a kid, there was a solid middle class. I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where I think we're like pre-pandemic, we were the 8th most economically segregated city in the United States. And there's no way it hasn't gotten a lot worse. And, the only people I know that still live around here, because I worked in food service for a long time. I was like a high school dropout, went to school a lot later. But like the only people I know are people that maybe got a house, something like that, and I think it's sad because it impacts our cities and our worlds and our communities. But the other thing too there is that this economy is not working for anyone. And once you really break into that tax code, it's sickening how rigged it is. And just America deserves a lot better. And so that's really what we're trying to tell people is, I think in America, there's a big onus on personal responsibility. So you may feel like the system is rigged, but you feel like at some point I made this mistake and now I'm in this financial situation. But the reality is, I meet people that say like, well, maybe I want to be a millionaire someday. And I just, I tell them, I'm like, the way our economy is headed, I'm not going to lie to you, that probably will never happen for you. It won't happen for me either. But, we have to fix this system because it ties into all of our other stuff. If we have the wealthy paying their fair share, what will the world look like? And one thing we try to challenge people on when we talk about a living wage, because people get, have ideas, and there's been a lot of propaganda around minimum wage. One thing I ask people is like, what if, Richland Center had a $20 minimum wage? What would that look like for your community? And people start thinking about not just who's impacted, but the whole city. Like, what does that look like? Because that means more small business. That means better everything. All of our systems are being paid into. I mean, everyone benefits when we do these things, when we raise the wage.
No, this is why I think the fight with the big three and the UAW is so important. You're talking about sharing the profits of labor in a more equitable fashion, so that it does actually trickle down like it used to when my grandparents were alive. Not since we've been trickling down, but pre-trickle down, before they told us things would trickle down, it actually did. Once they said, hey, it'll trickle down, it kind of stopped. But you're right. We paid into Social Security. We paid into unemployment. We paid into Medicare. The more people earned, the more taxes they paid to the local government so that you got more services. The machinery was working better when people had higher wages and were able to pay higher taxes. And that is not a bad thing.
No. And I think, it's like, imagine what our communities can be when people can afford to do things. And I will say, I'm a library board, proud elected Ann Arbor Library Board trustee in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And our library was able to unionize, and they were able to talk about, how having a living wage is so important there, because so many people can't even afford to live in the city and have to travel in, and how does that impact things like climate change? I mean, these things are all connected. So I think it's, there are tons of priorities we can look into. A living wage is massive. And then it's just somebody that worked on minimum wage. And this was back 10 years ago. But I remember working the hardest hours of my life, like 40, 60 hours on my feet, just coming home exhausted and not being able to pay rent. And there's no dignity in that. And I truly do believe like America's worth fighting for, and America where people can pay their bills is the America that I believe in. So that's why I do this work.
No, that's spot on. I say every time a new president comes into office, it's my hope that they will be the one who returns reward to work. And Joe Biden has been that guy for me so far. All of the things that he has done with the Department of Labor, the National Labor Relations Board, the talk and the support for workers, that is incredibly important. If only we had a House of Representatives capable of passing some kind of legislation that could make organizing easier and could help an actual, push to rebuild our middle class. Boy, would that be something. Instead, we've got a giant chaos show of children running amok. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're here with Kat Hadley. Kat is the director of the Great Economy Project. AmericanAgenda.com is the website that you can check out the work that they do. Let's go back to this for a minute because, I love the work that you guys are doing. And in fact, in North Carolina, you went into a small town, Whiteville, right?
Yep, Whiteville, North Carolina.
And you went in there, red hat, blue hat, didn't matter.
Yep.
Right, left, didn't matter. Democrat, Republican, didn't matter. It's about the issue. And as I say, the frame is not red hat, blue hat. It's hard hat. We've got to rebuild this country. And that's what I love about what you guys are doing. That it's not about which team you're on. It's about how do we make lives better. And I think if we did more of that, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just, being overly optimistic, maybe we would actually accomplish some things.
Yeah. I mean, I think that when we focus on the issue, and this is the thing, I think that as somebody that I've done a ton of across the aisle work, and people always ask me, especially when they're on one extreme side or the other, like, how do you get them to talk to you? And I'm like, I talk to them like they're human beings, and I talk about my issue passionately. And I think that, for the most part with this thing, people feel this like to their core. They've felt the decline of their financial power. They felt that shrink. And so when you come in and you kind of disarm them by saying, listen, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I don't want to talk to you about any of this other stuff. I want to talk to you about money, and I want to talk to you about solutions we think we have, and we want to see if you're interested in helping us. And I think when you do that, people are willing to listen, at least hear you out. They don't always 100% agree, but often they do. And, it also creates a system where, we have in North Carolina, the two women that run the program there. I mean, they're like our biggest helpers down there. One's a Republican and one's a Democrat, and they work together all the time. And we're in a group chat, and it goes beyond, I just think we've gotten so far away from each other. And I think there's valid reasons for that. And I'm not going to discount some of those reasons. I understand some of them, but I think when we can learn ways to talk to each other, that's just really important and really special. And so I'm really grateful to be a part of that. And you see it again in Wisconsin, and hopefully we're seeing it again in PA. And so it does bring me some hope that people are willing to, and you see people willing to help others. We have people in the program that are making good money, but they realize, my neighbor isn't, and I want them to be okay, or my community could be better because of this. And so they get involved. And so that's excellent to see. No,
isn't that the story of America, supposedly? Is that what we're led to believe is supposed to happen?
Yeah. I mean, and I think it still can, but it's scary, and I think, in North Carolina, we had Brittany go and test. She was one of our original cohort members, and she went to testify because, they passed this new law around, she went to protest against it and to make a comment against it, but with the redistricting maps that you can't FOIA anything they're talking about. And so she went and just talked about how this will impact advocacy because, where's the control lever for any accountability with any political power when politicians are writing the maps and, they're the ones in charge of these things? And then to counteract that FOIA law, they're also saying we're going to, start this GovOps program where we can investigate whoever we want. I mean, on the state level, there's some really scary things happening on a national level. So I think having these people come together and say, hey, wait a minute, this is something I don't really normally pay attention to, but I know this will impact us and I want to fight back against it. Like that's, I think, just really important to have going on in general from both sides of the aisle. We got to hold these politicians accountable on both sides.
Yeah, no, to unpack what you just said, because I want to make sure that the gravity of what you just said is gotten, that you cannot file a Freedom of Information Act on what they're doing. So there's no way to have any oversight by citizens over what our elected officials are doing in North Carolina. And they're setting up basically a secret police force to be able to go after any advocacy group. So basically your citizen lobbying could be, criminalized.
Yeah. And that's horrifying, right? Like, I mean, and just like, and we need people to be running for office to be aware of these things, and I think that the scare tactics, and they already exist. Like when you go to make public comment, everything's intimidating and it's all on purpose, right? And so, what we're trying to really tell people is, that this is your government too. Whenever I get upset about stuff, which is often, but it's also like, this is also our country, and I'm not going to let them get away with this. They can pass legislation, but I'm still going to be here, and I'm always going to fight back against this, because I do love America, and I think this is absolutely corrupt and wrong, and I think that it's worth fighting for. And that goes back to that limit when we say, well, there's nothing that can be done now. There absolutely is stuff that can be done. Is it going to be hard? Yeah, but it's still worth doing. North Carolina is worth fighting for. Pennsylvania is worth fighting for. Michigan is worth fighting for. Every state is worth it. And
Amen.
People are worth it.
Amen. AmericanAgenda.com, the website. We'll get links out on social media. Kat Hadley, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Love to have you come back, especially when you come to Pennsylvania, and share with us what's going on there. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Kat is the director of the Great Economy Project. Again, AmericanAgenda.com, the website. Quick break. Right back with your thoughts. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people of the talk.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The old factory towns in America's heartland have been taking a beating. Thing is, though, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. The new CHIPS bill that got passed will bring jobs back home and has already resulted in big announcements of major new factories opening. The American Recovery Package has allowed cities and counties to hire new police officers and firefighters and start rebuilding their communities again. We're finally turning things around after 40 years of screwing over working people. But will we keep moving in the right direction? That's our choice.
It takes a lot to raise a family. A good job, a good salary, and some patience. A lot of people my age are drowning in college debt. But I chose a different path. I'm a member of the IBEW, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. I work hard for my job, and I love what I do. I had a lot of choices for my future, but I made the best choice for my family. IBEW, the right choice.
So, rich guy, Jim Justice, governor of West Virginia, running for Senate, oddly enough. Evidently, the federal marshals have been instructed to seize a 2009 Bell helicopter that belongs to a company owned by Jim Justice and his family because, I guess, unpaid debts. And this is one of those this is one of those weird kind of things where you go, another one of the rich guys showing us how they evade paying taxes. You know, he doesn't own the helicopter. His company does. But he gets to use it whenever he wants. And this is one of those things that as working people, we don't really quite grasp. So when the rich dad, poor dad guy says, rich people don't pay taxes, he's not lying. He's being very honest. When Donald Trump said, I'm smart, I don't pay taxes, he's being honest. They're going to screw the system every chance they can because they lobby for it. they spend a lot of money to rig the game so that they benefit. And as I said the other day, my grandfather always said, if a rich guy's going to take a buck out of his pocket to tell you don't need something, you better spend two to get it, because they get return on investment. They know that the couple of $1,000s that they hand out in campaign donations is going to come back to them in multiples, because the tax code has been rigged so badly. And this has always been one of my main issues, because I think if you have a more fair economic distribution, if your work and your labor is compensated fairly, and you make a decent living, a lot of our problems begin to go away. If we don't have gazillionaires who have such outweighed power that, well, they can take on we the people, I think you have a different society. But what we've done is Reagan forward, we've rigged the game to allow the very wealthy and powerful to get away with whatever they want. Which is why this thing with Trump is so important. Why the fact that, the Justice Department and our justice system is going after a former president because of all of the crimes. And I remember back in 2015, I talked about this extensively, because we had a bunch of people on over that year who had been screwed over by Trump and his businesses. We had contractors who came and said, we did all this work, and they basically stiffed us and then sued us and offered us pennies on the dollar, and we had to take it because they would just tie us up in litigation. That was his MO, and it was amazing to me that anybody would actually work for the guy. But it was one of those things where you didn't know about it until he came out, because there was always gag orders and there was always threats of being sued if you told anyone, because that's what rich people do. And that's what, someone like Trump did. And I remember going, I don't know why this guy's throwing his name into the ring. At some point, all of this stuff has to come out. Now, again, I go back to 2015 with my 2015 brain, thinking that the American people were the people that I thought they were, in 2012 or 2008 or 2004, that the kind of scandal, the kind of corruption, the kind of graft that we saw out of him would turn people off. But oddly enough, in 2016, it actually turned people on. It actually got people to go, yeah, he's a smart businessman. He knows how to game the system. He's going to do it for us. And I don't know how you made that turn. I get, okay, he's a smart business guy who knows how to screw people over and screw the system and benefit himself. I get that. Completely understand that. I don't know how you make this turn that it's somehow going to benefit the rest of us. I'm still mind blown at that magic trick, at that act of mental gymnastics that you would think that this guy who has never shown any inclination of helping anybody but himself, magically, overnight, coming down an escalator, now makes him benevolent. It's really quite curious to me. And maybe if we still have the ability to think freely in 50 years, maybe if we're not a fascistic dictatorship in 50 years, maybe they'll write about this era. And maybe they'll have a better answer. Because I get the idea that, like my family, they believed that the jobs were going to come back. They believed that they were going to recreate those union jobs and that, even though there was no basis for that whatsoever. Other than, the analogy I always use is, a drowning man, when you throw him an anchor, will reach for it. Because it's, who knows, potentially could help. So I find it very interesting that this is where we are. Also very interesting, and this is where everything that Trump has ever touched, everybody who's touched it has been burned. And just look at the wake of misery that he's left. The fact that Mike Lindell, who I guess at one point someone said was a billionaire, has lost it all. It's all gone. Gone. That to me, just remarkable. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. You miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you find your podcast, you will find ours. We'll take a quick break. Right back after this.
Indigenous people have been saying that we feel a shift in the climate for decades. Climate change is here. The time is now to pass the torch on to the next generation of clean energy warriors. We need to put the land back to work for our people. That means creating jobs for them to live and thrive in our communities. The time is now. Congress must invest in clean energy.
I've been driving buses for 5 years, and my day-to-day routine is I wake up a little earlier than most people. I get on a bus, I go out, I pick up some students and make sure they get to school nice and safe. Here in Fairbanks, Alaska, that can be a challenge because of the winter weather and the icy roads. But I love the job. So the Teamsters are great. They provide us a lot of protections. They've always taken care of their people, made sure that our jobs were secure. We didn't have to worry about whether or not we'd have a job from day to day.
And that's amazing because before we'd be working 4, 6, 8 hours a day and only earning minimum wage was real difficult to make a living. And then the Teamsters pushed a lot so we make something we can live off of and not have to have a second job. What absolutely gives me peace of mind, the union membership allows me to focus on this job without having to worry about whether or not my family is going to be taken care of. I'm Andrew Case and I'm proud to be Teamsters Local 959.
Before we close the program, we want to take a moment to thank our viewers and to share a little bit about why we do what we do. At The Rick Smith Show, we believe that media today is almost entirely controlled by corporate greed. So we have now 24-hour news channels. But instead of 24 hours of news, what we get is 1 hour repeated 24 times, and with tons of commercials creating obscene amounts of profits. Information once presented as a public service has now become a private commodity. So when lies make money, lies are what we get. We get a corporate-controlled rage machine feeding us anger and hate, trying to convince us that our problems are right, left, or red, blue, when they are and always have been up, down, the wealthiest 1% versus the rest of us. Our goal is to be an alternative to that machine, not as a news show with a fancy journalist out front, but as a talk show run by a union truck driver and a team of working class heroes just like you. Everything we do, both what we get right and what we get wrong, is dedicated to advancing the interests of America's working families. No corporate ad buys, no think tanks, no focus groups, no talking points. We are media by working people, for working people. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.